For coming out, their passion for the law and truth, and their passion for you, Lord. I pray that you give us the strength to finish the semester strong and keep us safe as we travel home for break. In your name, amen.
Amen.
Well, I know it's a busy time of the semester. Personally, I feel like all my teachers got together and put all their due dates this week. So really, thanks for coming out tonight. Because it is such a busy time of year, we want to jump right into things. It's my honor to introduce to you tonight our speaker, Judge Barry Dickson. Judge Barry Dickson is a county judge right here in Escambia County, who was appointed by Governor Ron DeSantis late last year. He is a colonel in the Air Force Reserve, serving as augmentee to the Air Force Special Operations Command Chaplain. He is a veteran with over 20 years of military service, including deployments to Afghanistan and Qatar. He is a former law enforcement officer and also a full-time pastor. He holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Florida, a master's of divinity from the Asbury Theological Seminary, and obtained his Juris Doctor from Florida State University. He has been a member of the Florida Bar for over 18 years. His legal career includes service with state attorney and public defender in misdemeanor, felony, and juvenile divisions of the court. This is a man who has obviously worn many hats, and I'm excited to hear his story. Judge Dickson has agreed to answer any questions you may have once he is finished, so please keep those in mind for the end. But for now, please join me in welcoming Judge Barry Dickson.
Thank y'all for being here tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. And I have, as you heard, some different life experiences that I want to share with you, and also how I got to this point in my career. When I was in college, I felt the call to ministry, and I also felt the call to go to law school. I had to pick between the two. And I answered the call to ministry and went to seminary first and pastored 4 years before I went to law school and pursued that career. But I've got some different life experiences I want to tell you just to give you an idea of what it took for me to get to this point of being appointed as a judge. I hope all of y'all got one of these flyers I put on the back. If you got to look at that, I think it'll give you a good rundown of what I believe, what I find is important, and where I've been in life. And one day y'all may want to put something like this together for yourselves. If you ever get to a point of want to pursue a position that requires an appointment, something like this is very handy to give to people. And just I encourage you to try to make sure you tell them, what you believe. Not just I did this, but give them a little bit of your philosophy, and how you see life. And with that, I want to start with this. It's a passage from Deuteronomy 17. It says, "And it shall be when he sitteth upon the throne of his kingdom, that he shall write him a copy of this law in a book. And it shall be with him, and he shall read therein all the days of his life, that his heart be not lifted up above his brethren." This is talking about the king, and I think it's very important to see what God's word tells us there, and it's something that we see in the history of the Protestant Reformation and a lot of trains of thought, is that the idea that leaders, even kings, are not above God's law. Leaders, kings, they're not above what we see put in our Declaration of Independence, the laws of nature, nature's God. They are answerable to those. They are not a law unto themselves. And I think that's the foundation of law. We recognize that. That's the reason we have a written law. That's the reason we have a written constitution, because we believe those things as Americans. That is important to us as the American people. We recognize that our leaders are servants. We don't serve them, they serve us, right? That's the whole point there. So not only does this give the principle of lex rex, some of y'all may have studied that in school, this idea that the law is supreme even over the leader. The leader's will is not law. The law is on its own. It is superior to the leader. Declaration of Independence. Y'all are all familiar with this. We've been endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights. And why do we have government? Thomas Jefferson tells us right there that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. That's why we have government, is to protect our God-given rights. It's very important. Modern society doesn't see the law that way. Most of our culture does not see government that way. But we go back to our founding documents, like the Declaration of Independence, we see that that's the purpose of it. So we know that in a constitutional republic, which is what we live in, we recognize that no arm of government, No leader, not even a majority of people, can take our God-given rights away from us without offending the Creator who gave them to us. That's something that we believe as Christians. That's something we should all be able to embrace. And it reminds me of a passage that's often attributed to Ben Franklin that says, democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting over what to have for lunch. Liberty is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote. Simply saying that the majority doesn't just get to decide what it wants to do, any more than a leader can just do whatever they want to do, or a king can do whatever he wants to do. That if it's a majority, a leader, what have you, they are all answerable to that eternal, immutable, moral law of God that we find enshrined in the principles of our Constitution, that we find in the principles laid down in our Declaration of Independence. These things are critical to having something we call liberty, a term that we should all value. I also want to point out to you a book entitled The Law. It was written by Frederick Bastiat back in the 1800s. He was a French economist, and he defined the purpose of the law. You know, I think a lot of times we lose that in our modern culture. What is the purpose of the law? You talk to some groups, they think the purpose of the law is to shape society. The purpose of the law is to somehow socially engineer our culture in a certain direction. That's not what our founders thought the purpose of the law was. That's not what Frederick Bastiat thought they were either. He said this, he said, the law is the organization of the natural right of lawful defense to protect persons, liberties, and properties, to cause justice to reign over us all. And we think about, of all the branches of government, it ought to be the judiciary, those that are charged with justice, that should be setting the standard for upholding our rights to life, to liberty, and to property. The judge ought to be upholding that, in my opinion. So let me just say this, that we are Americans here. We're Americans in this country. We need to recognize that America is unique. Many parts of our culture don't see it that way. They think that American exceptionalism is a negative thing, that the special relationship we have with our government is somehow not that special, but it is. Because in America we recognize that citizens are not pawns of the state. That's the whole concept of liberty there. The citizen is not a tool of the state. Instead, the dignity of the individual citizen matters. And that's why we have freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to bear arms, the right to lawful defense, all these things. Because the dignity of each of us matters. Okay, very important. So I want to share that with you, and I want to just go into a little bit about my background. I am a chaplain in the military. I've been in the military for 20 years now. I went to Asbury Seminary, and I was the wing chaplain for 919th Special Operations Wing down here in Duke Field for about 20 years. Deployed to Afghanistan and Qatar. In Qatar, I was the deputy to the wing chaplain there who ran it was the largest chapel operation in the whole AOR. So we were in Qatar, and we were the hub for everything going on in the desert. So all the troops that were coming in would come through Qatar, and then they'd get dispersed out to the other countries surrounding. And we had over 200 volunteers. We had about 20 different Bible studies going, 10 different services going. It was a massive operation, massive. But it was one of the most blessed thing that I was a part of as far as ministry, because so many people were passionate and on fire for the Lord during that deployment. You get people out away from their comfort zone, and they started looking to God for help. And we had people that came in there, and the worship was incredible. We had liturgy, and I don't know what background you are. As a chaplain, we tend to be a little more non-denominational because we have to see folks from a lot of different perspectives. But I can say this, we had the most sincere, passionate liturgical worship, Anglican type worship, and the most sincere, passionate free worship or charismatic worship or more Baptist style worship. But across the board, people were excited to come to the chapel and have worship and worship God. And I thought that was incredible. That was probably the highlight of my career. At this point, I am the what they call an augmentee. I'm the reserve counterpart to the Air Force Special Operations Command Chapel, where we oversee all of Air Force Special Operations Command. We've got about 13 different bases. All the stuff, if you ever heard about people like pararescue guys, they'll go out and get the down pilots. We've got special tactics guys that will go in with the special forces guys to direct the air support that comes in to take out the bad guys. All those guys are a part of Air Force Special Operations, and that's who we look after now. Now that's my military side. My legal side, I started off as an assistant state attorney, and a few years after that I went to the public defender's office. I've worked in all three levels of the criminal court. I've handled misdemeanors, felonies, and a lot of time in juvenile. Juvenile was my favorite part, helping out the young people. Had seen them come in. A lot of them came from very bad homes. A lot of them didn't have a lot of direction in their life. But this is another area where you can use your Christian faith to help people, even in what we would not consider to be a traditional Christian setting or ministry. Because of the influence that I had the opportunity to give to those young people turned a lot of them around. And it wasn't just about me trying to beat the case or try to get them a not guilty. I mean, yes, you can do some of that too. But the main thing I did is try to change their direction in life. It wasn't so much about, are we going to beat this case? It was about, where are you going? What's next in line for you? What are you going to do with yourself? And I saw a lot of them end up getting turned around, and a lot of them end up going into the military, which was a blessing to me to see that happen. To see these folks that were really going downhill turn their lives around, and then they said, I want to have a military career. I thought that was tremendous, but I did that for several years, and at some point in there, I felt like I needed to pursue becoming a judge. Now, this was something I had always been in the back of my mind. I was in law enforcement in college, and I always thought, you know, I had some interaction judges to do that, but I never knew how to get there. So this is kind of the key I want to give you tonight is that how do you get to that point? Well, it's a little tricky because you kind of have to have a lot of different things going at once. You know, when I first started pursuing it, people said, well, it's real political. Okay. Well, I said, okay, well, that's fine because I've been a lifelong conservative. I voted conservative my whole life. We've got a conservative governor. I'm good. No problem, right? Well, no, it doesn't work that way, right? Okay. When they say political, they mean you got to know the right people. Okay. I didn't catch on to that until I started getting into the thing a little bit more and realizing, well, it doesn't matter what my political philosophy is on life, that's not going to get there. So some judges, I would say 90% is political. They've got the right political connections. They tend to get there pretty quickly. I'd say somewhere 8 to 12 years as an attorney. A lot of them can get an appointment, but they have very, very strong political connections to somebody at the governor's office where it just rolls in their form. Some of us, like me, I didn't have as much of that, and it was an 18-year path for me. But of course, even to get considered to that point, you have to get through something called the Judicial Nominating Commission. Okay, now that's a local commission or committee of attorneys that's appointed by the governor to screen people that are applying to be a judge. So you got to get through them. Now that's also political. It's different. And that you're not needing to have connections with the governor's office, you're needing to have connections with people on the local bar that will support you on that commission. Okay. That is a screening mechanism to make sure they get good, solid people. So most of it, I would say, is they're wanting good, high quality candidates. So they screen for that. Some of it is just pure politics, but who you know, do you know the right person on the commission, and can you get through? So that there's kind of I just, what I'm trying to emphasize to you is that there's kind of two things you got to focus on. One is what you're bringing to the table. You know, what is your experience? How dedicated are you? Or how much of a hard worker are you? What kind of background you're bringing? And then part of it is who you know. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. I don't want to think about that it's about who I know. But the reality is that's part of it, and you got to keep that in mind. Yes, sir.
So Judge, if you had to put it in a percentage ratio, is getting past that commission half of the battle, or is that 30% of it,
I think
in the whole race?
It's really hard to say because so many good people get through the committee and they cannot get through the governor's office. And they get through the committee 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 times and just cannot break through.
So it's not a one and done at that committee level. It's each time you're trying to get in, you have to go through that again.
And you got to go back through it again. So you really have to have both. I don't know, I wish it wasn't that way because it was hard. I mean, I started that process 8 years ago. 8 years of struggling to get through, you know. First, there was 2 or 3 times going to the committee and getting turned down from them because they'll take the pool of applicants. Let's say there's 10 people that are applying for this one judge position, and they'll narrow it down to 5. So the first time or two you go up, you may not even be a part of the 5. Then maybe the third time you come up, you finally get into the 5. Okay, now you've gotten through the first hurdle, and now you got to start trying to see about getting to number 1 and be picked by the governor. And then that can take 2 or 3 times of being on the list of 5 to finally get the governor's office to recognize you and give you the appointment. Now, some people can get through the commission their first time up, and they get appointed their first time up, and it's all beautiful and roses, and everything's done and great. But that's rare, and they have to have some real strong political connections to get that done. Most people have to go through a bit of a grind to get through that. Yep.
Now, it is possible you could just run in a head-to-head contest for that position if it's an open seat, is that correct?
That is true.
So that's another way to get in.
So, you know, we have terms, so each time your term comes up, mine will come up next year, you can always get a challenger. Now where we live, I don't know where y'all are coming from, but where we live in the Panhandle, very few people challenge a sitting judge. I don't know if it's a traditional thing here in our area, but people just don't tend to do it. Unless the judge is completely awful, then that can happen. But in Central Florida and South Florida, they're knocking each other off all the time. There's always going after somebody, knocking, and then the one that gets it loses it the next time. They're just in and out, in and out. And we don't have that here. So which is not, I'm glad, because I don't want to have to deal with all that. But yeah, you just have to keep that in mind depending on where you live. Here with Governor DeSantis, I can tell you what's very important to him is maintaining your role as a judge. Some of y'all may have studied Scalia. His philosophy is very important to Governor DeSantis. But the main thing there is remembering the judicial branch's role. You know, that we're not there to make the law. We're not there to try to tweak the law. We're not there to say, hey, I really don't like the way what that statute's making me do, so let me just kind of ignore it or move it over here or do something else. Because obviously when you do that, now you get 1,000 different versions of that statute throughout the state of Florida, right? Because every judge is going to say, that's a terrible law, let me move it this way. And the judge in Santa Rosa County says, yeah, that's a terrible law, let me move it over. And next thing you know, what happens? The citizen, because remember what we started with, the citizen has no idea what the law is. If it's a bad law and the judge faithfully follows the bad law, at least the citizen knows what that law is, what the implications of that law is, what is going to happen to me if I violate that law. They'll know. Because throughout the whole state of Florida, every judge is going to follow it, even though every judge may know it's a terrible law. And what hopefully will happen, what our founders would intend to happen, is that the legislature would wake up and say, hey, this is a terrible law. Why don't we change it? But if the judge takes that upon themselves, you get 1,000 different versions of the law, and the citizen has no idea what to expect when they go to court. And that's not the kind of society we want to live in. So, separation of powers, very important to Governor DeSantis with his philosophy and what he's looking for in a judge is something that is important to our country. It's important who we are as a people. If we're gonna have the kind of country that our founders gave us, we've got to be respectful of the separation of powers between the branches. Okay, well, that's what I got. So if y'all got some questions, we can answer them. Yes?
What would you say to someone who knows that they want to be a judge? What steps do you think they could take in law school and then after law school to try to make that happen as quickly as possible? Is there like an area that they could?
Well, in our neck of the woods, prosecutors tend to get appointed before most other people. So, I mean, I would think that would probably be the fastest route would be to be in the state attorney's office. And you can, when you get to law school, there will be internships you can do where you can even start working at the state attorney's office before you pass law school. That's what I did. And so that would be probably the quickest way, unless, you know, you had a particular area of the of civil law that you wanted to go into, that you know, a very prestigious firm or something like that. A lot of judges can come from those as well, because again, it's the connections that they make there. So with the state attorney's office, you're going to bring a good, solid resume of cases you've worked, because you get a lot of trial experience. So you're going to get a lot of trial experience. So you can say, hey, I've handled all these different kind of felonies. I've handled this. I've sat second seat on a murder case. I've done all this stuff that's really impressive. Whereas maybe the guy that went to the civil, to the big law firm, maybe he just handled a couple of big cases, but he made some big connections because there's big fish tied to those big money cases, right? So he makes some connections that maybe the state attorney guy didn't make. So all that you have to balance out. But I would say on the whole, most of them are appointed from the state attorney's office. Yes?
What does a typical week look like for a county judge?
Well,
Just walk us through in some outline form,
okay.
if you don't mind.
You know, my job is a high volume job. So I've got about 95% of my cases are criminal. They're all misdemeanor cases and traffic. So I'll get all the driving on suspended licenses, the DUIs, shoplifting, trespasses, domestic violence, not the big bad domestic violence with people going to the hospital, but the pushing and shoving kind of domestic violence. I get those, right? So these are all pretty simple cases. They're not real complicated, but you get a big volume of them. So, you know, I'll get big docket days with 200 people.
Wow.
Then we sort through those. We cull out as many as we can and wrap them up. Then we pass what we don't get done to what we call a mini docket day, where maybe you got 100. You try to cull out what you can there and get those done. Then you end up setting 20 of them or so for jury selection. Then you get to jury selection, a few more of them wrap their case up. You may take 2 or 3 to a jury trial that cycle. Then it kind of starts back over again. The other thing that the county judges handle is what we call first appearances, which is where the people that get arrested the night before will come in and we assign their bonds. So in Escambia County, our county judges assign the bonds for all cases. So we'll assign the bonds on murder cases, serious drug dealing cases. You know, you could have $500,000 bonds on people that are found with 50 pounds of cocaine and all this kind of stuff. So we'll have to address that too as part of our cycle. We'll have one of our weeks where we're dedicated to handling that. And then we get some civil cases. Most of our civil cases at the county level are going to be people that didn't pay on their credit cards, people that didn't make their car payment. You'll get some small-time construction cases, like let's say you hire somebody to build a dock, and they only build half your dock, and you file a complaint on that, file a petition on that, then we'll handle those. Anything under $30,000 would be on the county level. We have one county judge that handles small claims. Any of you that have looked at, have studied a little bit about small claims under $5,000, we have just one county judge that handles all of those, because that's kind of a special area, and it's just easier for one person to keep up with it. So we do have one that does that and doesn't have any criminal. But the other 4 of us have about 90–95% criminal and about 5–10% civil. We will handle some of the infraction type cases like speeding tickets, animal nuisance cases, people letting their dog loose, boating violations, not having the right boating equipment, things like that as well.
So what percentage of all those cases, if you start with 200 on the docket, settling out of court?
Well,
Most of them, I assume?
Yeah, well, I would say probably 90% of them end up in a plea bargain.
There you go.
Where the state and the defense will end up coming to some kind of an agreement. And then you might have 10, but out of the last 10%, I would say probably 8% of them get dismissed, where the state just says, it's not worth my time, I'm just dumping it. And maybe 2% end up going to trial. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Any other questions? No? Okay, well, let's show our appreciation. Oh, one more? Go ahead, you got it.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, buddy, go ahead. Yeah.
What's great ways to make connections with the local bar?
The local bar, they have bar meetings. They have a lot of social events that you can go to. So we'll get emails. I got it all through my career of bar events. They'll have like a regular monthly meeting, and then sometimes they'll have special meetings and where you can go to special dinners they'll invite you to come to. The other thing another thing that's very important if you want to become a judge in Florida is the Federalist Society. So we have a Federalist Society in Pensacola. It's headed up by Judge Prakash, and they have periodic get-togethers with speakers they bring in. But the Federalist Society is part of what I was talking about with the separation of powers. They're real big on separation of powers, helping people understand that. I'll just give you just one more thing on that. One of the questions I got when I was applying at the governor's office was if there was a dangerous dog statute and you had a neighbor that had a wolf and the other neighbor filed a complaint on him for having the wolf and came to the judge, would you find the person in violation for having the wolf, in violation of that particular statute? I said no, because it's a dangerous dog statute. If it was meant to apply to wolves or alligators or rhinoceroses or what have you, the legislature would have said what? It would have said dangerous animal statute, right? It would have said dangerous dog. So that's the kind of thing that I think they want you to think about. Now, I'm not sure that's 100% the right answer. I'm pretty sure that was the right answer. But that's the kind of thing you need to be thinking about, though. Thinking about how to be faithful to that concept that it is the legislature that makes the law. You as the judge are just there to apply it. You apply what they have passed. You don't expand it or twist it or turn it or make it more palatable or make it what you think is more just. You know, what's just is what the legislature has passed. Why? Because they're the representatives of the people, right? The people elect them. They decide what's just as far as what the law is, right? We apply it. Now, we have some discretion with sentencing, right? Where the judge can say, hey, you know, some people need to go to jail. Like in my case, most of my cases, people can serve up to a year in the county jail. Some people need to serve that year in the county jail. Some people shouldn't be given that much jail time, right? So there's some discretion there on our part. But I should never take it into my bailiwick to say, hey, I don't like what this statute says. I'm just going to kind of ignore it or ignore part of it or change it, right? Yes. Well, thank y'all. Appreciate your time tonight. Yeah.
All right, let's show our appreciation to judges. Okay, before you guys head out, I just want to give you guys a heads up. We are next semester going to be holding elections for all positions. So that's Dr. Reese was saying we're going to make sure it's a secure election, probably mail-in ballots this time. So
What software are you going to use to count those votes? That's what I need to know.
Yeah, we'll take care of it. But if that's something you're interested in, please feel free to talk to either Dr. Reese or myself or Becca or Ben if you see him around, and we can get you guys pointing in the right direction.
We might have some first-time visitors, so explain the executive committee positions.
Oh yeah, so there's
That'd be
three
great.
positions. There's president, who handles most of the things behind the scenes. Our vice president handles a lot of the meetings themselves, and then our secretary handles social media, contacting other people and stuff like that. There's a few more details, but that's the meat and potatoes of it. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to talk to me. Yeah.
I have a question about the mentorship that you launched. Can you give us some sort of a status report? How's that going, and what's our sign-up numbers look like? Maybe there's some folks that'd like to learn more about that. If we have the time, if
Yeah.
you don't mind sharing a little bit
Yeah,
on
so
that,
we
Will.
launched our mentorship program last meeting. We have about 5 mentors signed up, 5 mentees signed up. If you are a freshman or a sophomore and you're kind of struggling a little bit, you want to talk to someone who's gone through the classes before you, feel free to talk to one of us. We can get you signed up, get you connected with someone who can help you along the way. But yeah, feel free to reach out.
Does that come with a free coffee or anything?
I think you get unlimited smile tiles.
Oh,
if you sign up for
whoa,
that.
there you
So,
go.
Yeah, we partnered with Dr. Shoemaker.
That's a great way to do it. I love it.
Yeah, so if you have any questions about either of those things, please feel free to contact us. But other than that, have a great night, guys.
And what's the best way to contact? Then email
and
you
reach out to
directly,
us
or?
on Instagram.
Well, tell us about that
Thriving
Instagram.
community right now. Our Instagram is growing rapidly. PCC_pre-law_society. You can also email us at pccprelawsociety@gmail.com.
Great.
Cool.
And if you need any of that contact information, you send an email to me, and I'll forward that to Will Teasma or the others, okay?
Cool. Thank you guys. Have a great night.
Coming out tonight, guys. You can kick that door open, prop it. Thanks.
Very lucky. That's why.
So can you picture your picture on there as judge?
I don't know.
Oh.
Maybe someday.
There you go.
I grew up with parents on the beach, so I knew I wanted to come somewhere where I could get action. I thought it was going to be warm here all year round.
Yeah,
They
no,
kinda-
it gets a little
Yeah,
cold.
it gets a little